So on my right is Rhonda Ayala, and and on my left is Carrie Renshaw. Rhonda and I met about 4 years ago, and now Rhonda has joined our board. And Carrie and I met in 2005. And for those of you who don't know Carrie, Carrie is the leader of the Portland group. Carrie and I met in 2005 at the national conference that Robert and I were running, and she was elected to do the 2006 national conference in Portland, Oregon. And we became very close friends. And so Carrie ran the conference in 2006, but while we were sitting there at the national conference, Carrie looked around and saw that there was 300 patients in the room. And she said to Dr. Larry Coles at the time, if we could get 300 patients in the room, why don't we have 300 doctors sitting in a room? And so this woman single-handedly went and got the doctors together, wrote all the bylaws, and formed NANETS, the North American Neuroendocrine Tumor Society. And Carrie is very, very important to the world of carcinoid and neuroendocrine because she helped all those years to make sure that your doctors got educated. Carrie this year has left NANETS, and we're happy to announce that she has joined NCAN as a consultant to help us educate doctors. Because as many of you know, there aren't many specialists around the country, and in the coming years, we're going to lose many of them to retirement. We need to work together to make sure that these physicians are educated so we have treatments. And without these CMEs and these educational programs, even that the Healing Net Foundation does, there's not enough doctors out there to treat us. And I'm really scared. I have to be honest with you, I'm really scared. I'm not only scared for myself, I'm scared for my family, and I'm scared for your family. So this is something that if you can, we did put a brochure in your bags, and I never ask for money, but if you can donate $5, $2, I don't care what it is, to get these CMEs and to get these educational programs going. We're hoping by 2018 to start a fellowship program so we can teach these doctors and young people to get involved. $2, $5, I don't care what you can give, just make a donation so we can make sure that somewhere down the line that we have doctors educated on this disease. So that's my thing. So we're going to talk about our diagnosis and what we do. And Carrie, will you share, or Rhonda, you want to share your diagnosis?
Okay, you can hear me now. My name is Rhonda Ayala, and I'm a registered nurse. And you know how many of us have been misdiagnosed for many years, and I was misdiagnosed for 15 years. I was diagnosed with IBS, and when I felt funny, I had low blood sugar, and then they took me to an endocrinologist. I was in the hospital for 5 days. They checked everything. Didn't do any imaging, or I think they might have found my little friend in my pancreas. And anyway, ended up having the Whipple in January of 2010. So for those of you that don't know what a Whipple is, it's considered the granddaddy of all surgeries. It involves taking out the head of the pancreas, the gallbladder, the duodenum part of the intestine, and then rerouting all this plumbing and whatever. So as you can imagine, it would leave your GI system pretty upset. So as I'm exiting the hospital, I asked to see a dietitian for a post-Whipple diet, and they sent me a nurse with a bariatric surgery diet. There's no such thing as a post-Whipple diet at that time. Long story short, recovered a little while, and then this is my personal truth. I was in church one day praying what God wanted me to do with my second chance at life, and it came into my heart to start a Facebook page, start a website, and write a book for Whipple patients. And if I was having questions as an RN on how to take care of myself post-Whipple, I knew for sure that other people were as well. So the Facebook group started May 15th of 2015. 2010. And she and I have become like sisters, so she just corrects the heck out of whatever. So anyway, so at any rate, and the group is now known as the Whipple Warriors. On Facebook, it's a Whipple Surgery Survivor Group, and we are now the largest group of Whipple patients in the world. We have over 6,000 Whipple patients in over 30 countries in every state in the United States. And I'm happy to say that I bugged University of Miami enough that they have now just started the first ever post-Whipple patient study that will be in medical journals shortly, hopefully. And so that's enough about Whipple. Oh, how many people in here have had a Whipple? Well, hello. You're in the group. Yay! Anybody else in the Whipple Warrior group? You will be. Okay. So at any rate, because mine's pancreatic and Mary and I joined up, whatever, now the Whipple Warriors is under the umbrella of NCAN. So we're working together with the Whipple Warriors. If you know anybody who's had a Whipple or is looking to have a Whipple, we help patients before, during, and after surgery, as well as the caregivers, because it's a lot on everybody to have a Whipple. On Facebook, it's called Whipple Surgery Survivor Group. And you do have to ask to join because, believe it or not, there's some freaks out there in the world. And so we have to go through, who's joining our group. But back to my peanut. So after I had my Whipple, the physicians and the doctor, the group down there, told me that I was 100% cured. In fact, the doctor came in at the university with my file, and he looked at me, and he put it up in the air, and he said, "Congratulations, you just won the life lotto. Awesome, you're going to be fine." It was not in my lymph nodes. Everything was negative. It was confined to the head of the pancreas, good to go. So I informed Mary Ann that I am good to go, and I am cured, and I don't need any further follow-up. To which she bugged me and said, "You're wrong, you need follow-up." Well, 4.5 years later, she proved that she was right. A blood test came back. It was my chromogranin A, and it was, should be like below 5 or whatever, and it was 140. Yeah, and it had been really low. My Ki-67, someone asked me that before, was 1 when I had the Whipple, and unfortunately, on this new one in the liver, came back at 25. So they put me on some hard IV medications, chemo, lost my hair, got sick, did that whole game. And unfortunately, I was not candidate for surgery because the tumor came back right about where the Whipple was, and you can only have so many, they can only pull these things so far, so I was not a surgical candidate. So I opted to have the CyberKnife. Actually, it was my only option at the time, that and chemo. And so I'm happy to say now that after all of that was over, like maybe a year later, 6 little ones appeared in the liver. And then they put me on Captem, and I've been on that for almost 2 years? Almost 2 years now. And my last scan 3 weeks ago, showed nothing. No new activity. The old one's actually dead from the CyberKnife, and it's actually starting to shrink. And no new activity, so Captem's keeping me going. Now, well, thank you. Now, as far as Captem goes, anybody on that in here? Yes. Okay. That one has created, in me anyway, this thing called hand and foot, and it's a typical reaction. Dry hands, dry feet. I have dry eyes. Occasionally I get a sore in my mouth and stuff like that. But to be honest with you, it's all perspective in my book, because I'm here. My kids know I'm here. And you know what? If I have a little nausea, like a grade 4 nausea after taking the Temodor, which is a harder one, so what? We are here today, and we are here, and we're fighting this for our loved ones every day. I know. Stop. Jerk. So anyway, you know what? And you just take it as you can. People are like, "Oh, you're so brave." Well, not you. I'm not brave. You just do what you got to do to get through it, right? So it's all perspective. Are you going to sit in a little corner and be upset? Yeah, we're going to have down days. But the other times, man, we're here to live life, so live it, right? just take your Imodium. Anyway, here you go.
And I think what she brings up is that you need to live life. I talk to a lot of patients. Like I said, we send out over 1,500 information packets a year, but we get anywhere from 4 calls to 20 calls in a day. And when you call, we talk to you. It's not, hello, get off the phone. We talk to you. And sometimes the phone calls maybe 15 minutes, and sometimes we've been on the phone with patients for 3-4 hours. But the one thing that I always try to explain to people is that you need to take control of your life. It's very easy to get in that humdrum of depression. And so I tell people, get up every day, put on your makeup, get dressed, and go out. I don't care if it's to the store. I don't care if it's to the corner. I don't care if it's going to sit at a friend's house to have a cup of coffee. Get up and move. Get out of sitting in the house and being depressed. When you have the surgery, as soon as you can, try to get out and move, because that's what's going to keep you going. If you look in the bags, it's a schedule of what our events are. I don't have time to be sick. I don't have time for that garbage. I don't have time to be depressed. I have to keep moving, and that's what you need to do. Yes, you have some down days. It's okay to have a down day, but you need to make sure that you stay positive. Try to socialize as much as possible. I know that sometimes the diarrhea can be debilitating, but if you can get out and take an Imodium, take it. If you want something to eat, don't deprive yourself, because you're only making more stress on yourself. If you want that piece of candy, eat it. If you want to have a glass of wine, have the glass of wine. The cancer is in your liver already. I'm not saying go out and drink a gallon of wine, but no. I mean, I'm not saying go out and drink a gallon of wine. What I'm saying is live your life. You only have this life once, and what are you going to do, deprive yourself?
The other thing I really encourage my people to do is, especially when you first get diagnosed, you want to sit on that internet and look, and it's like you're glued to that chair. There's only, some of the information on the internet is good, but some is really bad. And your brain can only take so much, and it becomes overwhelming. I always tell my support group people, I say, my job is to help you live your life with cancer, not let cancer live your life. And if you are sitting there on that computer, hour after hour, it's consuming you, and it's not healthy, and it will make your symptoms worse, and it will make your cancer grow. So do not do that.
Yeah, and also when you're on the Facebook, we're getting a little off subject, but anyway, when you're on the Facebook pages or the online groups, please remember that these groups are run by other patients, okay? And I get really, really upset sometimes because there's a lot of bullying on there. There is a lot of bullying. And people will say, you need to go to this doctor, and only this doctor could do that, and only this. Let me tell you, I had my surgery by a local doctor. He did a fabulous job. I've seen every one of the specialists, but I still go back to my local doctor. So yes, once in your lifetime, you need to go and see a specialist and have a specialist work with your local doctor, but you don't need to travel to that specialist every time.
And your doctor should be willing to work with a specialist. And going to a specialist, what we want them to do is create a treatment plan for you. But she will communicate with your doctor, and you continue to be with that doctor until your treatment plan needs to be tweaked. And that's when the specialist comes back. If your doctor is not willing to work with the specialist, or the specialist isn't willing to work with your doctor, then you really need to kind of question why that is.
Right.
Along that line, what I've told all the people that I can is you need to also, I have my own files. I have every single thing at my house. I've been accused by one doctor, who shall not be named, for being a professional patient. Well, let me tell you something. If I'm not a professional patient on my own case, he's not a professional patient on my case. Somebody has to be, right? So every time you get a scan, this is what I did. I got a notebook, because I'm also a nurse, and I know that they have these records, on the computer now, but I want to see, I'm old. And so I got a notebook, I got the dividers. I did one for blood work, one for scans, one for, CAT scan, MRI, all these different things that we go through, right? Office notes, medications, etc. And so I did it chronologically. So of course the oldest is on the bottom right up to the top. Every single time you go to the doctor, those are your records. You ask for a copy while at the office. The reason I'm telling you to do it while at the office is because if you leave and request them, they can charge you. But if you're at the office and say, hey, I want a copy, they'll hand you a copy. That's the trick for that one. They have an MRI report there. I'd like a copy of the MRI. Okay, get it before you leave, right? So now you have the MRI report, and that's all fine and dandy, but then you have a doctor who actually wants to see the MRI scan. So what you need to do with that is when you're in the MRI machine, you ask, let's say I have one doctor I need to give it to, I ask for 2 copies, because guess who's keeping one? The professional patient. So that is in my hot little hands at my house with my result right there. The reason why you want to do this is you bring that whole notebook and everything to every doctor appointment. If I'm at the GI and he goes, boy, I wonder what your last MRI scan, here you go. He doesn't have to go and take time to have his girl request it from my doctor, and then we get that, come back in 3 weeks and we'll discuss it. Well, it kind of surprises them too, because they're like, oh, you have it. Yeah, here you go. So do that and keep your own records at your own place. Yes. Mm-hmm.
What I've done with all my records is I scan them, make them into a PDF.
Okay.
I get copies of my MRIs or any other scans. I duplicate those on my computer, so I have them to share with the other docs who I may need to share with down the road. I don't carry around a big portfolio of all my reports. I mean, I've been into this 8 years, have too many.
Yeah.
So I just put those files under categories chronologically, and I put them on a thumb drive. So when I go, for example, for treatment in Germany, for PRRT or for restaging, I take a thumb drive. It's
Excellent.
got my full medical history in chronological order that I can share with my doctor on the spot.
Excellent.
Right. So
Who doesn't
you
have
can
a
do the
computer?
book, you can do a thumb drive, but just make sure whatever you do is that you are keeping your own records.
I'm going to go scan mine.
Does anybody have any questions? Because we're running over time.
Yes.
Wait for the mic.
That is a very well needed thing. But in addition, we need to start somebody that'll educate the health insurance companies. You know,
We wish we could.
That is
Yes.
so huge.
It's true. It's true.
It's a huge thing, but it needs to be done in addition to the doctors.
Right. Well,
Because they have so many questions and they deny and they don't understand.
well, even when they, because most of the time when you're going through the insurance, it's not a doctor on the other end or a nurse, and they don't have a clue.
With that said, most insurance companies, if you go up the chain, have a nurse advocate, a patient advocate person in the hierarchy, because I've had to fight it myself. So I'm like, well, who signed your paycheck kind of thing, and then go up.
Always ask for a patient advocate or a nurse advocate to with the insurance company. Most of them do have them for free, and they will keep in touch with you. So if you are having a denial or something like that, you can contact them, and they will help fight to get
they
the
get it.
insurance company.
And a lot of them, there's different sets of guidelines out there. There's the NCCN guidelines, there's NANETS guidelines. Most everyone goes to the NCCN guidelines. I have a copy of those, and Mary Ann would have a copy. So if you get a hold of us, we could direct you to the correct page of the NCCN guidelines to help solidify your position and why you need something. And so that's, again, what we're here to do, is to help you navigate, because you're exactly right. You say something to someone at an insurance company, and they're flying blind. They're just looking through a book. So you need to kind of direct them to possibly what it is, and we can help you do that.
You know, I was on the other side of it for years when I worked with a doctor, and if we got a denial, as a nasty nurse, I would write them a medical explanation why the patient would need it, you know. And so if you get a nurse navigator to be on your side, you can, you know, she gets it. So you don't have to explain it to somebody who has really no education. So go up the chain. See how that works. Report next time. Thank you.
And there's also a woman, Lori Todd. Think of her name. Thank you very much. Lori Todd, and she does. She's called the Insurance Warrior, and she has a book out there and a CD and stuff like that. That she also helps with doing appeals, and she actually works down and tells you how. We have in the past for pharmaceutical companies have given appeal letters to for patients to get approval.
Any other questions?
Okay, well, Eric, Lou had to leave for a second, and so we got to continue until he gets back. So Carrie's going to share her story.
Okay, I will be fairly brief. I was first getting symptoms back in 1993. And about every 6 to 8 weeks, I would get flu-like symptoms and be kind of in bed for a while, and then I would start feeling better, and then it just kept going on. I'd gone to the doctor, and they finally decided that I was depressed. And so they wanted to put me on depression medicine. Well, and this was in July, and I was going on vacation in August. And I said, well, I'm not going to start this until my vacation's over because it says I can't drink, and I'm going to drink on my vacation. So I started it in about September, and the beginning of October, I got sick again. But this time I didn't get well, and it just got worse and worse, and my husband finally said, you need to get into the doctor. Well, I got into the doctor. They immediately rushed me to the hospital, and I had an emergency appendectomy. It took me about 3 days to get out of the hospital because my blood pressure wouldn't come up. And on Monday, I came home on a Saturday, and on Monday, both of my girls, one was in 3rd grade and one was in 6th, came home, and the telephone rang, and my oldest answered it, and she says, it's Dr. So-and-so. And I was like, I don't even know who that is. And so I got on the phone, and he goes, you have cancer. And both of my girls were right with me, and I was like, oh, and what kind? And he said, carcinoid. So I need to get you in. We're going to do full body scans. We've got to get you into a medical oncologist. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I went downstairs and I said, I have cancer. And it's carcinoid. And I had never heard of that. Well, now remember, this is in 1995. So, you know, I don't know how many of you guys remember, but the internet wasn't even very fast. And there wasn't much information on there. And so when I started looking it up, it was like the average age was 65. I was 37. The average life, 5 years. My kids are in 3rd and 6th grade. I didn't think I was going to get to see them graduate from high school. And so when I went to the medical, and that was probably the longest week of my life, waiting to get into a medical oncologist. And when I went into him, he said, well, the location and the size of your tumor, you're basically cured, but I just want you to have tests every year. Well, at that point, all I heard was cured. And so I closed that chapter of my life, and every year I was going in. Well, 2 years down the road, I started having symptoms, and I would tell the doctors about it, but they just were like, oh, you know, that's probably just GERD. So I was treated for 5 years for GERD, and on my 7-year checkup, which is very normal I was a midgut. Mine was appendiceal. It was a midgut. And the normal recurrence is 7 to 9 years from diagnosis. And they said, it's back. So I went through about $60,000 worth of tests. Every orifice of my body was penetrated at least once. And they finally, I was also having some female issues, and I had fibroids, and they were growing really rapidly. So they decided to do a hysterectomy, and my doctor said, we're gonna look around. So he looks around, and he looks up at my liver, and he sees something, takes a picture, sends it up to Pommier, and then they did an angio and found out that my liver was peppered with tumors. At that point, I thought, okay, I need to start learning about this disease. And that's when the whole story came, when I, being the A personality that I am, it's like, oh, I can do a international conference for 500 patients. Oh, yes, I can start an organization for physicians. Oh, I could, and that's kind of how everything ended up getting started. I'm now 22 years from my first diagnosis. I've been on somatostatin analog or sandostatin for 14 and a half years. I did have, on Christmas Eve, had a gallbladder attack. I texted Rod, he was on vacation, and I said, I need my gallbladder out. And he came off vacation and took my gallbladder out. And I've put on 18 regional continuing medical education programs for physicians and 9 international conferences, and I've sat in on the writing of 5 sets of guidelines. So I kind of looked at it as it was, people had said, you're kind of that 1 in a million of having your tumor come back. And I said, well, I've always told my husband that. So it wasn't a surprise to me, but I feel like it was my destiny to do this, and whatever footsteps that I can leave in the sand, I'm hoping that they are going to help each and every one of you and for generations to come. So I'm not done. I still have a lot that I'm excited about, this next new chapter of my life and working with NCAN and continuing. It's my passion to educate physicians and healthcare providers, and we've got a whole lot of exciting things that we're going to be doing. So just stay tuned, and again, support us. Every doctor that I bring to a continuing medical education program, I look at that and I say, how many patients are we influencing by bringing that one physician? So, that to me is a lot of power that we're being able to bring this education. And in the last 5 years, there's been such tremendous advancements. I'm really proud of what we've done. One of the things, when I had written the bylaws back in 2005, one of the things that was in those bylaws, and Nanette's actually took them out, but I still think it's super important. And so I'm going to be, with NCAN and myself, we're going to be working with Roswell Park Cancer Center to put together what we call a NET registry. What that is in the big centers like the MD Andersons, the Dana-Farbers, the Mayos, they have about 20% of combined, all of those, about 20% of tissue and blood from the patients. There's 80% of patients out there that tumors and blood are sitting with nothing. It's not doing anything. So what we're doing is it's going to be patient driven. So if any of you want to participate and donate your blood, find your tissue and donate it, we'll be collecting that at Roswell Park and making that tissue and blood available for research in the field. So instead of having a very limited, biased amount of tissue that's at these few centers, we're going to be collecting it all there. People will put in research projects, and then they will have the ability to use that blood and tissue. So stay tuned. We'll be letting you all know how to participate in that.
And that's something that's really going to be important. We talk about that this is a very expensive disease, and I understand that because for 8 years I was on standostatin at 4 shots a month. So believe me, I understand the cost of it, and I'm now on an insulin pump with octreotide for a 24-hour infusion. But people always come up to me and say to me, I'd really like to help, but unfortunately, this disease cleaned out my bank account. By doing this tumor bank, this is something that each one of you can do and make a difference in the community. So we're going to be, once the program is up and running, I'm going to be sending you an email. They'll send you a postcard. They'll send you the box of what you have to do, and then you'll mail it back. And then we're talking about maybe possibly in a couple of years coming back to you and asking you for a new tissue sample or a new blood sample, depending on if you had any surgery or anything like that. But this is something that you can do, and it doesn't cost any money. So really, truly consider something like this because you can each make a difference, okay?